Hello Fischer fans, welcome to Chess DNA. In today's video we're going to be covering the game 2 from the famous Bobby Fischer's book, My 60 Memorable Games, and we are covering the entire book in this series. In yesterday's video we covered the game 1 against James Sherwin from 1957, and we saw how beautifully Fischer sacrificed his knight on that h7 square for the attack. That game was from 1957, this game is from 1958, which means Fischer is only 15 years old. And it will be interesting to see how he handles the one and only Bent Larsen, because Bent Larsen is no ordinary opponent. He was known to be one of the best players of his time, and he was also known for his unorthodox, unique attacking style of play. And he was ranked at number 3 in 1971, so he was definitely a tough opponent to face. And the title to this game by Bobby Fischer is given Slaying the Dragon. So this gives us a hint that this is going to be a Sicilian Dragon, which is always nice to see, because Dragon is considered to be one of the solid Sicilians, where opponent basically, or player with the black pieces tries to just, try to transit into that end game and just play a little solid game where he has minimum weaknesses. But it can be very tough to face or play Dragon when you're playing against Bobby Fischer, because he was known as one of the best attacking players of all time. So let's see how the game progresses. So again, no surprise, Fischer always chooses one e4 as his main opening move against literally anyone. So Larsen replies with a Sicilian defense c5 as we are heading to the Dragon. So knight f3 and d6. In yesterday's game, Fischer, instead of d6, faced e6, and Fischer here decided to play d3. And we talked about how d3 is a very good option against the e6 Sicilian, but is d3 not a good option against the d6 Sicilian? Here you have to transpose into the main Sicilian, like d4, and then after takes, knight f6, knight c3, and here black actually has some options. Of course, g6 leads the Dragon, but here black can also choose to play the a6 move, which is the Najdorf Sicilian. So there is also knight c6 leading to the classical Sicilian. There are a lot of Sicilians possible here, but Bent Larsen's choice was to play the Dragon. So he goes g6, he wants to play the bishop to g7 and castle. Like we mentioned, a very solid kind of style to play the Sicilian. So let's see how Fischer basically dissects or slays the Dragon, as we will see. So the idea is to play bishop g7, and Fischer actually plays f3. He wants to support this e4 pawn so that once he develops his bishop to c4, the knight is never targeting the e4 pawn, because that is sometimes possible when the queen is on a5, pinning down this knight, which is a defender of the pawn on e4. So this is f3 move very useful to just defend the pawn on e4. So Larsen castled, and Fischer goes queen d2, making his intentions clear that he wants to castle and launch a pawn storm on the king side for the attack. So Larsen replied with knight c6, and Fischer, before actually castling to the queen side, plays one sneaky move, bishop c4. He always loved to play this bishop to c4 and then always dropped it back to b3 square. From b3 square, the bishop always had a very good view of the black king. And also by playing bishop c4 before castling long, Fischer kinds of, plays this game with Larsen where he kind of, makes Larsen predict whether he wants to castle kingside or queenside. So he keeps his options still open. But after Larsen, captures on d4 and Fischer captures with the bishop on d4, Larsen just wants to trade as many pieces as possible. He goes bishop e6. He's not scared of Fischer capturing the bishop, because he will actually recapture with the e pawn, with the f pawn, and then gain a very nice control of these f5 and d5 squares, making it impossible for the Fischer's knight to sit on d5 square. Although these looks a little bit weak, but they are controlling very vital squares in the center. So Larsen is okay with that. Fischer, seeing that, just drops the bishop back to b3, which he always loved to do, inviting Larsen to capture here, and then he's going to take back with the a pawn. And then since he has not castled queenside yet, then the rook is going to open up, and he's going to use the a file for the activity of the rook and maybe castle kingside and just play with that strategy. So Larsen, continued with queen to a5, developing the queen to a very nice outpost on the a5 square, where it will be just, putting a lot of pressure on the knight and the queen. So it makes it hard for the knight to move unless Fischer wants a queen trade. So here just, castles queenside. He's not still scared of just, getting the bishop traded off. He's just going to trade off and then play the king to b1. There is never an attack on the queen side, and then Fischer is going to just run all these pawns down the board and just slay the dragon, as we are going to see. So Larsen is in a hurry. He wants to just, get his own attack going on the queen side. So goes b5. He wants to go b4, kick the knight away, and then just, get his own attack going on the queen side. But Fischer, first of all, makes a little king move, king b1. Whenever you castle queen side, it's always useful to just, invest a little bit of tempo to move that king to the b1 square, where it will be just protecting that a2 pawn. So in case the bishop gets traded off or the knight moves away from the c3 square, there is no queen takes on a2. So king is always going to protect that. So also the king is just moving away from that half open c file, which could be very dangerous if the rooks are going to land on that c8 square. So Larsen continues with b4, and Fischer actually just puts his knight on that beautiful d5 square, where it will be intercepting the bishop's interference on the black's king on the queen side. So this is a very nice move, and he's inviting to Larsen to take the knight on d5, after which he's just going to take with a pawn, and then this bishop is going to be really bad because it's going to get under attack and there is no good square for the bishop. Bishop might actually find a good square on f4, f5, but then g4, h4 are going to come with tempo, so that's what Fischer is aiming for. For that reason, just Larsen captures on d5, and then Fischer grabs it with the bishop, and he's not scared of losing that bishop on d5, because if knight takes, then he's just going to take back with a pawn. Also, there is bishop takes g7 that he can throw in first, because that would be hitting the rook. So king takes, and only then he can take with a pawn, but also queen takes is also fine, just centralizing the queen, inviting the queen trade, but then rook gets into the game, is much more active than the white's rook, and the other rook is going to join in. White's rook are a little bit more active than the black's rook, although its position is pretty equal. So that could have been pretty nice for Larsen if he chose that option. So here Fischer actually took with the bishop, and Larsen first improves the rook to the c8 square, where it will be just finding much more activity on the c file. And Fischer actually decided to bring the bishop back to the b3 square. He wants to enjoy this position with the bishop pair, not allow the knight to take it on d5. So he wants complications. So Larsen is now looking to double up the rooks on the c file, and that's it. Fischer has waited enough. Now he wants to launch this pawn storm on the king's side. So let's see how the attack goes. Queen to b5. The idea is now to play these moves, b5, a5, a4, and just knock at white's door, like what he wants to do with his bishop. And let's see whose attack is going to be faster. So Fischer has already managed to run his pawn down the board, and black is just still a couple of moves away, getting his pawn on the queen side rolling in. So rook to c8, he just doubles up the rook, and Fischer grabs on g6, and you cannot grab with the f pawn since it's pinned, so you have to take with the h pawn. And now the file for the rook is now open for the attack. So let's see how Fischer takes advantage of that. So first of all, g4. He wants to just, kick that knight out of that beautiful defensive natural square f6 around the king, and then he wants to, trade off the dark square bishops and land the queen on h6. That's his plan. And Larsen continues with his plan. He's one move away from actually getting it. So let's see how Fischer deals with it. He ignores the threat of a4 and goes g5, hitting the knight. And Larsen thought that, yeah, it's fine. He's just going to block that h file by playing knight h5, and then he's threatening a4. But this could be a great moment for you guys to pause the video and think about a move. How can Fischer save this bishop? Or if there is another move that you can think of that Bobby Fischer played in this position. All right, so drum roll, Fischer actually took the knight on h5, sacrificing in exchange because he thinks that his attack is going to be much powerful, and once he just eliminates that knight off the board, it's going to be much faster. So Larsen grabs it, and then Fischer actually plays this move g6, taking advantage of the fact that the f7 pawn is pinned by the bishop. So g6 is going to come with a lot of power. And here Larsen actually first of all plays e5, just blunting this bishop down, but this is a huge mistake. Best move would have been to just, try to trade as many pieces as possible. Bishop takes d4, and maybe Fischer would actually grab here, giving a check, but Larsen could have been fine. King h7, king h7, king e8, both are actually the moves that probably, I mean, white is still better because he's getting an attack. The rook is going to come on G1 square sooner or later after Fischer captures it here. But the variation chosen by Larsen in this game was not so accurate, because he first of all, tries to block the bishop's attack on the king side. But Fischer first of all captured on f7 with check, and Larsen moved the king to f8, and only now he just drops the bishop back. And the h6 square is compromised because queen and bishop both are eyeing on that h6 square, and if rook allowed to enter the position via rook g1, it's going to be game over. Plus a4 is no more that effective because we have the d5 square to just park the bishop beautifully, having a great look at the king side as well as the queen side. So Larsen's play has been refuted by Fischer, or you could say the dragon is half slayed already. So let's see how Fischer finishes it off. So first of all, he tries to complicate things by going d5, just intercepting the bishop's protection on the f7 square. But Fischer just grabs it on d5, and only now he grabs the pawn that was first protected by the bishop, but now rook takes on f7. But here, just unleashing the attack on the rook, but not just that. This pawn is getting super dangerous because it's just 2 steps away from promoting into another queen. So, and also this rook is just trapped. The rook f6 and then bishop g5 just traps the rook. There is no way for the rook to go. Like you can take on f3 here, but that's also losing. There is bishop e7 check, which is going to be deadly for black. If king e8, there is just d7 check, and it's mate into just king maybe, like you can take on e7 maybe, but d8 queen. And if you take here, queen takes is going to be checkmate on the board. So these are the ideas that Fischer has in this position. For this reason, there is no point in capturing on f3. So Larsen actually just tries to, bring the queen into the defense somehow. But Fischer is now completely winning after he takes the rook. He gets back the exchange with some interest. Bishop takes on f6 and now d7. Now you're threatening the rook. So Larsen plays rook to d8. But now it's over. First of all, queen to d6 check. And at this position, king to g7 was played. And Fischer replied with rook to g1. And in this position, Bent Larsen actually resigned. Or maybe he played one more move, king h7. But after bishop takes on f6, he resigned. Because if you just take the pawn here, then there is this check, and after a few moves, it's going to be a checkmate on the board. So a very beautiful attacking game by Bobby Fischer. What lesson can we get from this game is that with black pieces, when you're playing, especially against a very attacking player, it's a good idea to dive into some trades and try to, liquidate the position, simplify it. Because if we see in that position when, if we go back a few moves, like in this position, if Bent Larsen decided to, there was at one point when there was this bishop d5. Let me actually go back. So yeah, when there was bishop d5, he should have taken it. He should have taken it, exchanged as many pieces as possible, and played a simple endgame. But no, he decided to get ambitious and tried to attack the best attacking player of all time, and it backfired pretty bad. So that was a very instructive game by Bobby Fischer, teaching us the mentality to attack with white pieces and not be scared of a counterattack. So that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed. We'll be coming up with the game 3 in the next video. Hope you guys will subscribe and like and all that stuff. So thank you so much for the support, guys. Have a good day. Bye.